All right, everyone, welcome to today's meeting, the 6th day of May, 2025, Committee of the Whole meeting. Before we get started, we have a land acknowledgement, and we recognize the town of Cardston is located on traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We'd like to also acknowledge Councillor Brown is away on vacation at this time. We have an agenda to adopt. Councillor Granger.
I will make a motion to adopt the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting for May the 6th, 2025 as presented.
Okay, any additions? I guess I should ask for that prior. Nothing? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. We have minutes from April 1st that we need to adopt. Yeah. Councillor Burton.
Move to adopt the minutes of April 1st as presented.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Thank you. All right, we will move on to budget 2025.
Okay. Am I okay to sit here, Council? I know Councillor Granger, it's a bit of a crank this way, but you're
That's
good
okay,
if I
no.
stay here? Okay. Yep. You have a copy of just the tax budget in front of you, but there's really not much to talk about since last meeting. There was absolutely no changes since last meeting to the utility or the electrical budget. And there's only a couple of small things in the tax budget. One of them is, I think I mentioned to you about how we got our policing invoice and it was in the 700 and something thousands. They got just today, she got back to us with a number and it actually went down 16,000. So that was a good thing. So that number is reflected in here. So the new policing requisition, it's about, what is it, 206,000, I believe, is what it is now. So that was, yeah, we're down to $209,900 from 226. So that was good. And honestly, Council, after that, we had a small tweak to one of the parks projects. I mean, we're talking a $1,200 tweak. And then the other thing that's in here, and I wished I'll tell you right now, I don't have this ready for tonight because Nolan's been sick, but Brandon got us the new number on the potential 7th Avenue local improvement. So if we only go to the pump station, he's got the new number of the curb, gutter, and asphalt just to that point. And so for next meeting, for sure, I'll have a new schedule for you to look at, but Nolan's been out the last couple days. So the new number is in the budget. We adjusted in here. But the breakout for each property I don't have for you just yet.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Granger?
I'm going to ask the same question I asked a week ago about the potential groundwater supply.
Yep.
Do we have anything on the chemistry?
So I actually have a short report I got this afternoon from the
It's quick
driller.
verbal because...
Driller basically got back to me, and I'll get you this formalized, by the way. I'll get it for you. The short answer was what they found, and and I'm not going to get the geology right, but they feel within the town limits that we are on where the aquifer starts to close up, and the flows he was getting, he did not think were going to be adequate. And so they tested another one out by the St. Mary's pump station, and they're going to see what that looks like. But the one at the Lee, and what they understand about the geography, is that we're at the tail end of, or we're at one end of an aquifer, and it's not looking like there's good flows there. So I don't know the chemistry, but I know some flow information.
Okay, well, where I was going with this related to the budget is what you and I have talked about as an aside is, and I asked about it last week, I'd like to see some pre-design money, or at least knowing that if we've got flow and quality and that this could potentially be an alternate groundwater supply, that to keep going we would need to do pre-design engineering work, say $20,000, $30,000 worth of work to do a pre-design report to identify what we would have to do to our existing infrastructure to switch the from surface water to groundwater. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was hoping that you were going to tell me that long-term yield and quantity of water and chemistry is okay. Yeah. I'm sure that the water will be treatable. That would be rare that groundwater isn't, and I'm assuming that it's a similar water that Moses Lake is tapped into. But I
Potentially.
guess I don't know that,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
um,
I will have a formal, well, I was just going on my emails. I have, one second here. I have a well report. I haven't even read it yet. I got the
Okay.
summary.
so back to my question, just try and reassure me that if this works out the way I'm hoping it will, that we've got somewhere, either as a line item in the budget now, as part of this budget, or convince me that if it works out, that we could find, $35,000 to do some pre-design work.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take that as a great segue into the reserve,
The reserve.
Yeah.
reserve
Because you
discussion.
said that we could get it from reserves. Show me.
Correct, so I will.
Yeah.
Let's do that right next.
Yeah.
So on budget, one of the big things we have to do in the next week is after this discussion we have now about reserves, is we'll plug all that into the budget, and then we can tidy it up. The budget you have in front of you, by the way, is balanced with, we're like $16,000 out, but that's fine, we can fix that pretty quickly. And so what I wanted to talk to you about mostly tonight was reserves. So as you remember from last meeting, we just plunked everything into unrestricted surplus, and then we would like to propose how we would make that restricted surplus or reserves. The other part of this conversation, and our first two items are all gonna meld together here because you have discretion to use some of this reserves to help with mill rate as well. And so we have some low-hanging fruit we're gonna propose to you on helping with that, so I'll get to that as well. Let me start with, you have this sheet. It's a table with a bracket in the side. I passed out to everyone, just on an 8.5 by 11. And so what this list is where we would propose sending all of that surplus into reserves. And then what I have for you as well, now I got a much smaller font, bigger list, where I'll break down any of those bigger accounts, I'll break down what makes them up, because they're a conglomeration of a number of accounts. So there might be 15 small items, or 15 small amounts to make up one big amount in a category. So the short story is, we're talking about dealing with about $1.5 million here. And some of it was carry forward projects that we had budgeted last year, didn't fully complete, so we're carrying the balance forward to complete them this year. That's everything in red at the bottom of the page. So I would suggest to you, I wouldn't spend a lot of time looking at changing those. We need to finish those projects and pay those out. So they were already taxed for last year, or whatever funding we used last year.
Jeff, can you tell me again, the crushing, we crush every other year.
We've even done it now, because how we're doing it, we've been stretching it out a number of years now.
Okay, so now you have put $100,000 in there,
Yep.
but we used to use, what, $25,000 a year or
So
something?
we used to put away that. Last year, we rented the machine and did the crushing ourselves, and we were able to save significantly on the project.
Right,
And so we had pulled it out of reserves last year, but we're recommending that it is put back into reserves in 2025.
so 100,000 was what we had in the past? Seems to me it was way less than that.
So annually, we were putting about 25, if I recall. I don't have this
That's-
right in front of me.
That's what I think it
But
was.
last year, we had, it was a couple $100,000 we set aside to do a major crushing. We didn't use it all.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And so we have that extra. We tried this for the first time. We rented the machine and we did all the feeding and we did all the work.
Okay.
And because we had such a stockpile, it worked pretty well.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So I'll start, I'll start at the top here and just talk about a couple of things. So there's a lot of little things here, and I won't get into the details of them unless you want me to. But campground reserves, we were over in revenue and under in expense. So between the two of those, we had a $26,000 surplus. We're proposing to put it in campground reserves.
And so, sorry, Jeff, the black is.
New
is-
reserves.
Is surpluses.
Yeah, correct.
And the red is projects that were
Last
in
year.
last year's budget that
That are
didn't get
carrying
spent.
forward,
Yeah,
correct.
okay, got it.
Yeah, so you've already acquired that funding somehow, and we're saying we move it into 2025 to fund it in 2025. We don't tax for it again, or use grants again,
Okay.
is what I'm saying.
Jeff, I hate to ask for more clarification, but just so I understand before we get started. So the black, those are amounts that were extra out of our last budget,
Correct, out of 2024.
not total reserves or anything like that, just money that worked out well for
Yes.
us.
Yeah,
And you're suggesting that we take those surplus funds and slot them into these
these
block
accounts,
lines?
correct, exactly, thank you.
Yep.
And again, some of those, and I'll talk about them, they're made up of many accounts, and we're saying, well, if there was 9 different utility accounts, we put them all in major utility capital. We're not trying to create 100 different reserve accounts.
Yeah.
So we tried to kind of group them, and then, so yes, that's what that's about. But this is 2024's performance essentially. Either we were over revenue or underspent in 2024. That's what these numbers are. So campground reserve, cemetery perpetual care, we always take all that revenue and put it in an account for future. That's normal. Cemetery reserves, we had a contractor for the cemetery who resigned that position halfway through the year, and Public Works did the opening and closing for the rest of the year, and so we were able to save that contract amount.
Councillor Court?
Yeah, what's going on with it now? Who's
So
running
we
it?
have Jeff McKenzie's full-time in Parks and Rec,
Okay,
and he is assigned primarily to the cemetery.
awesome.
Like Mountain View, Jeff McKenzie?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah,
He's up here
so
with
he
us.
started maybe 3 weeks ago or
Awesome,
something.
okay. Councillor Burton?
Is it our intent to keep it that way, like, because I'll tell you my opinion on that, is that something like a cemetery where it comes out of nowhere, you know, it takes everybody by surprise typically. The continuity of having the town do it as opposed to a contractor. You know, if you're the family that needs the service, you need the service.
Yeah.
So I like the concept of keeping it in-house.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at a couple things there. One is we did put it out to tender for contractors, and the price for the contractors exceeded a full-time position, which then I had someone for 2,080 hours a year instead of the 500 hours for the contractor or
Yeah.
something. And so that even financially almost made it a no-brainer for us. We'll be using that position even to help at the transfer station. We'll be using it in other areas, particularly in the off-season.
Okay.
The 19,700 portion of underspent on electrical wages, so again, we were just under on some of that. Waste management reserves, 33,100. This is particularly garbage, solid waste management, we mean. Our revenues exceeded budget, which didn't offend me too much because the price of bins and whatnot has just gone crazy. And so that surplus is exactly the price of one bin now, I believe. Jill, were they up to 30 or was it 15? 15. Yeah,
Like
so
you're
15.
talking
We
like-
usually buy 2 a year, sorry.
Like the metal bins?
Yeah,
That's
those are
crazy.
15,000 bucks a piece now. And
They used to be
so
You
nine.
get in the garbage business.
having a little bit of
Building
surplus
Yeah.
didn't offend me in waste management. This one's very interesting, golf course reserves, there's 2 lines here, there's 118,700 that it was underspent, but I wanna be cautious about this. Now, remember, we budgeted a $100,000 loss in the golf course, but we didn't, we broke even. We actually did a little bit better than break even. So it's not that we had a surplus, we just didn't have a loss.
Less loss.
So, yes, we had less loss. So, we budgeted to take $100,000 from the taxpayers to subsidize the operations of the golf course. We didn't need it. So, there is a discussion to be had here that we've suggested that goes towards golf course reserves because it's timely with the construction, but it really is tax dollars and would be appropriate to go anywhere. However, our position is, given the capital work that we need to do at the golf course this year, that's where it would go.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Same thing with some underspend on the wages in golf. We know that Sandy, unfortunately, his health didn't allow him to be with us last year, so that was left over.
Okay, now.
Yeah, he's back, and we hope he stays well. Recreation Master Plan reserves, so this one is, you already budget to reserve a considerable amount for recreation. That's in your budget. This was every facility and anything related to recreation that was either a little bit over in revenue or a little bit underspent. We've just lumped it all there to go towards future recreation. So, again, it doesn't mean we made money in it, it means we didn't lose as much as we budgeted. Let me be clear about that. And I'm happy about that, by the way. It's better than me coming to you with the other side of the coin. So we do have a little bit of extra there. Land sale reserves, we always just move that into land sales when we sell land. That's what we commonly do with any land sale. We just immediately put it in our land sale reserve. Offsite levies reserve is the same thing. We had a little bit in the fire, so we had $2,300 in fire. We put that towards, we're suggesting fire truck reserves. Same thing in bylaw reserves, machine repair contingency reserves. We just underspent on our public works machinery spend.
Councilor Burton?
And we're going fast to try to get to the hockey game, but
No, it's all good.
Oh, no.
That was
offsite,
not my motive.
offsite levies reserves,
Yeah.
what offsite levies, like, why do we have income in that account?
So somebody subdivided a parcel that had caveats of levies on it, is what that is.
Okay, so in the past, and now somebody's developed, and as part of that, they
They
pay,
have to pay the levy.
Okay.
Yep, correct.
but that's not really a revenue source, that's kind of one-off whenever it comes in.
Yeah, anything in the area development plan that there's subject to a levy.
It just sits there until, like,
Until-
in other words, this isn't one where we do an annual,
No, it's when the lot was
this is
sell.
just whenever,
That's right.
okay, yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
it's not the
Yeah,
source.
whatever's
it's not the
caveated
fixed
to the
source of
title of that
revenue.
parcel.
So my question then is, if I could,
Why is that down?
why does it stay in a reserve? Wouldn't we put it over to the land
Sale.
purchase reserves, lump it in with that?
So we've put it in, we've put it in a reserve because under the offsite levy bylaw, it is earmarked for a specific capital improvement down the road.
Okay,
Okay.
So the only reason we can collect it is because there's a bylaw
We've
that
spent
says we
it.
can.
Yeah.
And that bylaw says what it's for. So it's reserved when that thing comes up to be done.
okay.
Yeah, that's the intent behind it. You guys, actually, as this term, you haven't dealt with that bylaw at all. It is time for us to refresh it a little bit, but back when the first infrastructure master plan was done, there was certain pockets of town that it was determined by the council of the day that there would need to be improvements made in other parts of town to accommodate that, and that's what that money's being collected for.
Okay.
Machine repairs we talked about, snow removal reserves, this is a common one we do as well. We will bring money out of reserves for snow removal contractors. If it isn't used, we're putting it back in reserves. That's what this transaction is. So unused from previous years, Civic Center's $400. 18.3 in library, we had an underspend there. We had budgeted to participate in retrofitting some lighting at the library last year, but the library took it on themselves. And so we didn't end up spending that.
I just wanted to go back to the snow removal.
Yeah, sure.
This is always people always seem to complain about this a lot in the winter. Have we ever looked into a third-party contract that could do our side, like, our what's the word, our non-essential roads, like, because it's those people that don't get their roads done that are complaining, and they understand, but they are still upset that they're not getting done. So have we ever looked into like a third party that could do those back roads, not the town? The town just takes care of our major ones, like our priority ones, but have we thought about it?
Yeah, we do it a little bit, but I mean, so for example, Frank Bevins has a small grader. And so he'll do everything that's not paved and has ditches, because he can just push it in the ditch. So 7th Avenue, Home Seekers, anywhere that's just ditches and no curb and gutter, he'll just go down and push it in the ditch for us. But we haven't looked at saying, okay, everyone in priority 4 is going to be done by a third-party contractor, because now they're priority 1, and priority 3 is priority 4, and we haven't looked at it. Could it be done? Sure. I still struggle with, we probably do it better than anybody else.
Yes.
Okay,
Not complaining, I'm just throwing out.
No, you're exactly
Compared
right.
to
Could it be done?
Lethbridge?
For sure.
Good grief.
It absolutely could. We have used Southwest. They have a really cool blade that goes on front of their loader. And they can move a lot of snow for us. And when we've had big ones, we've definitely used that.
Yeah.
So they're out pushing, and then we use their trucks to blow it into.
Again, just, it's a subject that comes up,
it-
and it's the
no
people
question.
on priority 5 and 4 that
Yeah,
don't ever get it done, and it's before it melts, that's all.
Eventually,
Is that really
Chinooks.
true? They'll eventually get it done.
I would say it rarely gets done
Is that true?
on priority for like 5
depends
roads.
on the snowfall. I don't know what to tell you. We have a lot of times where big snow, we do priority 1, the wind comes up,
And
we
it
go back
starts
to priority
again.
1. And so that will.
And I don't know what the solution is. We have a high wind area, like it's
Yeah.
just, I get we're doing our best and we do a great job. I'm just looking out for some citizens that feel they're getting shafted, so.
Some of these people should live in Calgary. There's some
Raymond
cul-de-sacs,
and McGrath.
residential cul-de-sacs, never see a blade all winter in
Right,
Calgary.
yeah, that's-
I lived on one.
I don't like saying that to them because
don't
they
live
live,
in
they live
Calgary,
here.
right? Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, well, I guess that's your road to hoe.
Your road-
Sort of.
I live on one of those last priority streets, and sometimes it gets done and sometimes it Chinooks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Buy a Jeep.
Anyways,
I have one.
it's
I-
just,
Because I'm not on the high priority roll.
it's just something that seems to come up and anyways,
So if, I'm not trying to put it back on you guys, but if council wants a different service level, then that's fine. And we do have $100,000 in snow removal reserves.
and I don't know what it might cost,
That
it might be
person, I
more
don't
than
know
that,
that
right?
either,
A contract
but
could be
yeah.
huge, and I don't want that, I'm just,
So
anyways.
the 100,000 is surplus.
Yeah.
What do we spend to generate that?
It's on snowfall.
Yeah, it really depends. We didn't have a lot of snow this last winter. So it was really minor. We did everything in-house last year. We didn't contract any.
Yeah.
We had 0 contracted last winter.
But I must really say, over the 15 years I've been on council, we have always reserved, and some years when there is a lot of snow, we use a budget and the reserves. And when there is little, we kind of, we work on a reserve for the years when we have a lot of snow. So I think the system is working well for us up to now.
Sorry, go ahead, Councilor Court.
Well, just to compliment the town, I'm in a very short road. There's 3 of us, counting Shaw's up there. And usually when I call the town, if we're drifted in, Ben's gets drifted really bad because of the wind, they'll come in and blow it out. But they don't have to haul it away, they can just push it in the field.
Because you're a council.
But they've been pretty good about coming. No, it's
No,
not
and
'cause I'm
yours
desperate.
yours is an easier one because we can just toss
Push it out
We
and
can
run,
just
yeah.
push it right in the field.
Yeah.
And that helps a bunch.
A lot of it comes from,
But we get a ton of snow
oh,
down
yeah,
there.
yeah, okay.
For sure, yeah,
Which their road it never gets done.
yeah.
Anyways.
Anyways,
Okay.
if something we could think about, I know we've
Okay.
talked about it, but
No, a
anyways.
service level discussion is completely appropriate.
I
on
think the
that.
service is great, by the way.
Yeah, but-
I'm
Compared.
just, from the citizens, I'm bringing it forward.
Yep, fair enough.
Thanks.
The biggest one on this line, obviously, is the 1.1 million in major utility capital reserves. Now, this is a bit of a catch-all, and we have a lot of it in there because we have this sewer plant project.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention, though, I didn't give this to you, but I have it here. Here's the major components of what makes up that 1.1 million, just so you're aware. I'll start. Any underspent labor in any department, we put there. So there's $250,000 in there, because we were about 8% under budget on labor last year. If people get sick, or they go on leave, or they get, something happens. So we ended up about 8% under, which gave us $250,000 worth of unspent labor last year. So that's a big chunk of it right there. We had 127,000 and 254,000 respectively in the sewer and water departments. So we had both higher usage than we budgeted, so we use average usage to budget. Usage was higher than average last year, and so we had excess revenue and we underspent as well. So that's almost 400,000 between those two. We had 34,000 administration, just general, 31,000 in different requisitions. We were over surplus revenue in like business licenses, animal licenses, and penalties to about 30,000. We had 88,000 in public works in surplus custom work, so work we did for developers and connecting new developments to services, extending utilities to new developments like the one above the golf course where we extend electrical and water and sewer and everything. We bill for all that. So we had excess custom work revenues. And then the biggest one was investments, and I mentioned this last meeting, we had a $362,000 surplus in investments. That's an anomaly, I wanna make that very clear, because we had a whole bunch of notes and bonds that reached their maturity. And so that won't happen again for a number of years again. We're very, very fortunate in 2024 that we have almost $400,000 in investment surplus, above and beyond what we budgeted, by the way. So that was a great thing, and that's what gets you that $1.1 million number when we add all that up. So we put that in major utility capital reserves, and I'll give you some really rough math here, but you're going to see where I'm getting at here. If we add $1.1 million to major utility capital reserves, we will be at $4 million in major utility capital. That happens to be exactly the amount to take our non-borrowing cash for the sewer plant to 17.75 million. And you may know that number as the current estimate on the new sewer plant, which if we use that, we wouldn't borrow anything for the wastewater treatment plant if the tenders come in at around 17 to 18 million.
And we still haven't heard on the last,
So I will say on the FCM, we have. So we put in an application for $5 million loan from FCM. We were awarded that loan with we were awarded 4.2 million with a $660,000 grant. So we have all the financing instruments in place to do this project.
isn't there another grant outstanding though?
Oh, so we do have one that I don't even know when we're gonna hear yet. It's a big one, and if we get
Yeah.
that, then honestly, we'll look at expanding scope.
Yeah.
We'll look at replacing the roof and doing some other things associated with
Yeah.
it, fixing the lift station, that kind of thing.
Yeah, cause that's full grant.
Yep, that was.
When are we gonna hear?
Don't know. Don't know, federal one with the
Question.
election and everything, no idea.
Okay.
I was just, sorry, before, did you ever find out if we can get around that loan by like pushing money around and just saying thanks for the grant?
So, don't know what you're talking about, counselor, but, no, I do, I'm just kidding, but the point is can we utilize the lending from FCM because the grant on the back end is contingent on using the loan?
Right.
And so we need to look at, once we know exactly when the tenders come in, counselor, then we have to structure how we're gonna use that debt exactly. Because if we can, I would rather use the loan
Yeah,
and keep our reserves invested and use that to pay the loan
Right.
over time.
What's the value of the outstanding grant, if we got it? What's it?
640,000 roughly.
Okay, so it's not huge.
No,
but
it's not huge,
Well,
but it's
Every
something.
bit
Not bad.
helps.
Yeah, it's certainly a good chunk, and so yes, to your point is,
but you might
Once-
wanna use it and make money on your,
yeah,
Okay.
if I can leave, 4 million invested and make 5%, that's 200 grand.
yep.
That I'm almost better off at the end getting that for a number of years than taking the $600,000 grant.
This really is like playing Monopoly with
Yeah.
real money.
Councilor Britton?
Taxpayer money.
Probably exactly 1 year ago, when Hawken was here giving the financial report, I asked him what kept him awake at night, and he said it was, I'll read it for you, major utility capital reserve deficits.
Right.
So I would suggest that no matter what happens,
We keep
we
the
shouldn't
money
siphon
there.
money out of this reserve. Like,
Never.
no matter where it came from and no matter what else we could shuffle, that's just
It has to
such a
stay there.
potentially large hole in our armor that I think we need to keep every penny we can there.
My comment was gonna be, I spent my whole working life working with municipal government. I've never seen a surplus, like this.
Well, I do wanna qualify,
And sorry, let me finish my
Yeah.
thought. And if this had happened in Whitehorse or somewhere else, the council might say, well, you're budgeting too conservatively because you're not spending what we give you.
Sure.
You're getting the work done, but you've got money left over.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case here.
yeah, and I always wanna be careful with that, because that's an exactly right thing for a counselor to say.
Yeah.
By the way, that's highly appropriate for a
Well, I've
counselor
seen
to
it.
say that.
Right.
I just.
When I was a city engineer.
I try and think of it as a percentage of your total budget too. So we'll do Jill, any guess between operational and capital, what our budget would have been last year? So yeah, a $26 million budget. And so if I've got $1.5 million left over at the end of the year as a percentage of total budget, it's not a massive margin. right? It's not extraordinary. And so I just, you know, I always want to be, yes, it's a few percent, no denying, and part of it, like if you look at unspent labor at $250,000, well, I wish I would have had those people all year and I spent that on labor.
Yeah.
But people got sick or people changed jobs and that kind of thing
And
happened.
usually it's the other way, you overspend.
Right.
And you're coming back to the well, that's worse.
Yeah, and with our investments of 360,000 surplus, we know that's an anomaly.
Yeah,
We're not gonna have that next year.
yeah.
We're gonna be, you know, $250,000 less than that next year. So we're really lucky to be having these conversations, and I'm very glad that it's not the other way. It's not the other side of the coin saying, hey, you know what, we gotta pull from reserves to balance.
Or you
That's
gotta
what-
tax your citizens, like.
Yeah, or we need a 5% increase just to balance the deficit.
So
from
tell me about the
year
water,
before.
go into the red ones.
Yeah, so these ones are projects we had budgeted in 2024. Aquifer study, intake engineering, water fill station, water treatment plant, light upgrade, ball diamond fences, fridge at the soccer field, new siding, crushing reserves. Well, crushing we know is in and out, we underspent. So these are just things that for one reason or another, there was supply chain issues, there was contractor issues, there was whatever it was, they weren't finished in 2024. So we've rolled them into 2025 and we're bringing the funding with it.
So are the red numbers the remaining
From
balance
Yeah,
of the
that's right.
budgets?
2
That's
years
right.
ago.
It's already been budgeted for.
Yeah,
Polycat's been bought, so.
I was gonna say, they've been
That's
putting
out.
that on.
yeah, we might not have been invoiced yet.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that, right? We will sometimes get an invoice late in the year, and so we roll that forward so we have the money for it.
Awesome.
So that's what you're seeing there, Counselor, is we already have those in the budget, planning on coming forward, and the funding is reserves. So that's how those are working.
Perfect.
Any other questions on this, guys?
Yeah, well. Back to my original question on that specific aquifer study.
Yeah.
So the 35,000 will pay for the drilling and checking the water chemistry and so consider that money spent.
Yeah.
So to move forward, we don't have anything in our budget.
So I haven't,
my
because
point.
and I don't know what that number is, and I think I mentioned this before, what I would recommend, but if you're not comfortable with it, that's fine, we can do something different, is we can take that from water.
utilities.
Or utility reserves.
Yeah,
So if it's, for example, Counselor, 30,000 out of the 1.1 million,
Yeah.
it's not bad.
Do we have to do that now?
No,
you can do that any week you wish.
Okay, so let's hold the thought.
Yeah, we'll get a quote
Find out
on-
more information about this groundwater.
Yep.
And then talk and make a decision, because if it works out, I would like to see some
Yep.
preliminary engineering money go in, so that at the end of this term, for the next council, they know what they would have to do, and they can make an educated, informed decision as to whether to switch from groundwater to, or surface water to groundwater. That's what I would like to
Yep.
leave them with.
Counselor Burton?
Loud and clear. Excuse me.
So I agree with that. I think that'd be very prudent for us to do that, and even if it means, so if those flows aren't adequate, where is our drilling at Lee? You said drilling at Lee, where is that?
So go take the 501
Yeah,
out to our pump station at Lee Creek, so down past Caldwell's and Lowe's, and right there on the corner, between the road and Gary Quinton.
Oh, you're right.
We drilled down in there because, one, the elevation's low, so we didn't have to start up on top any hill, and two, we have pumping infrastructure there. And so the hope was that would be a great spot, because then the extension for pumping infrastructure was a few meters.
Yeah.
anyway, even if, we can talk more later about it, but even if there's some more drilling that we need to do in other places, just to see if we can capture more flow, if they are at the, like a pinch of an aquifer.
What
or
I
if-
understand is they were going out to St. Mary's water intake to try there too. So another low elevation, but a number of kilometers to the east.
Well, then you'd have to build a pump station at the river.
Well, we have one there. That's our St. Mary's intake.
No, it's just switch water supplies.
Yeah, so we just switched the pumping.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I agree with the sentiment of,
Yeah.
we gotta make
Okay,
sure
well,
that we.
let's
Yep,
park it and wait and see.
sure.
Okay, anything else on that, guys? All right, we'll move on to our favorite policy we have.
Oh, we got a mill rate still.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
I
Counselor.
thought- yeah,
I want
that.
to talk about mill rate.
Mill rate was our favorite policy. That's
So,
what I'm
yeah,
getting at, so.
that'll be your favorite thing. I just want to talk in preparation for next week. We want to bring you a mill rate bylaw that you're comfortable passing 3 readings on. This worksheet, and it'll take a little following, so it's got some yellow in all the boxes, and it says 21 to 25 down the left. It's more what we use internally, but basically what we've based the mill, well, we've done the mill rate calculations based on keeping the mill rate status quo. They're the same as last year right now. What I want to suggest to you is we are expecting on the average, and please remember, we're playing the averages here, but over both residential and non-residential, the average assessment increase across the town is about 6%, 6.15%. So even with a flat mill rate, the average homeowner should expect 6%. And that may be steeper than you're comfortable with. But one thing I would like to suggest is you're in a very good position to address that.
But the 6%, sorry if I can ask, is mostly related to the increase in the assessment, not us. Is that right?
So, but
Well,
yes, it's not due to the mill rate, it's due to assessment increase, you're exactly right. But it generates us additional revenue, and you can control that by the mill rate. That's your one lever you have. Now, I don't want to get it confused with the school requisition, which you have no control over, and it's been assessed against the properties, and that's what it is.
Yep.
So, what I wanted to ask is, we started the budget discussion with looking at a modest increase in overall revenues. And once we got the assessment after December, we put all that in, and it generated us another about $100,000. And for the most part, that $100,000 got ate up in other additions to the budget. But we just looked at a list of surplus north of $1.5 million. And I want to talk about a couple of these categories. So back to this sheet we were just looking at for reserves, that you as council may want to look at applying to our operations this year and not putting in reserves. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring down that total tax burden. So as an example, which I think if we look at campground reserves, so the very first one, $26,100. We don't have to reserve that for campground. We can apply that to our perceived operational costs of 2025. So we can take that surplus and say, okay, we think it's gonna cost $60,000 to run the campground. We can apply that $26,000 to that and lower what we need to tax for by $26,000. So that's one way to start chipping away at the 6%. Another one, for example, which I think, in my opinion, you should really look at is like the $19,700 of underspent on a certain department wages. Let's just roll that forward and pay this year's department wages with that money and not tax for it. You know, those ones I think are kind of low-hanging fruit for you. We even have that big one in golf, where we had $57,000 under wages in golf that we could use to pay for golf this year. And then we don't have to use other sources of revenue for that.
Well, then you have 100,000 right there.
Councillor Burton?
So the assessment is a grand delusion. Nobody in town is richer because their house was assessed at a higher number. In fact, it probably means they're poorer, because what it really means is
Pay
real
more
estate
taxes.
held the value and our dollars all have less buying power.
Exactly
So it is the grand delusion.
I've heard it referred to as a grand delusion.
Yeah, maybe that's even better. You'd also hear my Styx reference to the old album, but in any event,
But you tax for it.
so I don't think we should increase what we tax because of that grand delusion or delusion. It just doesn't make any sense. I think our budget should be what it is. Here's what we rationally think we should spend this year to provide the level of services that people expect and are used to. And not feel like, okay, the assessment went up, therefore we have ka-ching, here's some more money. That's one thought. The other thought is, I think the education tax really needs to be separated out and it's added to our budget. I don't think we should provide less services because the province put up their tax higher. So I think that needs to be its own thing. It's independent. It went up. I don't feel obligated to compensate for that in the least. So those are two thoughts on what we should do.
I'll just mention, for example, on your residential properties, school requisition amounts will go up from $794,000 last year to $998
Yeah,
this year.
which is a lot.
And as a percentage, that's really high.
it really affects the mill rate. There's no doubt it affects it one way or the other. We cannot change that portion.
It's almost $1 million for a town of 3,500 people.
Oh, and you can, yeah, it's
But-
well, we're 1.2 million in total education tax now.
Counselor Court?
I start paying for schools without the government help.
Okay,
I remember when they brought equalization in, and it was great for rural, and it still is, even though we're paying a lot of money.
Counselor Granger?
So if we leave the mill rate the same as last year, what this piece of paper is saying is that, and we apply the, and we see the ripple effect of the increased assessment, the average person would see 6.49% increase in this year's taxes over last.
Correct.
We've been trying to hold that at 2.
Correct.
So in order to get rid of 4.49, you'd have to drop the mill rate, correct?
Correct. And I'm suggesting you have the ability to do that.
Okay.
I also just want to clarify that number includes the school tax. So that's jumping it a lot.
Okay, so if you took the school rate out,
It's still about 6% across all properties.
yeah,
okay.
so, I mean, what are we comfortable with hitting our residents with?
So essentially, there is something in what Councillor Burton say. How much do we need in our budget to operate the town efficiently, appropriately? That is one, that is what is reflected in the budget that you have presented for us. There, what Jeff is saying now is that we have a little bit of wiggle room. But what I'm trying to understand from that 6% increase in assessment, which changes, I mean, we kept the mill rate the same on municipal, and we kept it the same
Both the same,
on
yeah.
seniors, and we kept it the same on non-residential. From last year, it's exactly the same rate. What I'm trying to understand now, what does 6% assessment represent in terms of dollars? And if we were to go to 2% or 3%, what are we talking about?
That's what I was getting
Yeah,
at.
so I happen to have that ready for you, Mayor.
What does
Perfect.
4.5% of dollars
And
mean?
you-
So, yeah,
knew
so
you
if
would
you
have
wanted,
that.
if you wanted to, offset the increase in assessment totally on the average, you would need to reduce the budget by $210,569.
And that will bring us,
That would take 6%, you would
To 2.
You would take all of the increase in assessment out. You would lower the mill rate enough to offset all of the increase in assessment. Now,
So-
you may not need to do that. We built this budget on a 2% revenue increase. We
Right.
built it on some of those numbers.
so,
but that 6% represents just over 200,000.
okay,
So you're looking at, sorry, Mayor, may I?
yeah, go ahead.
I guess I'm sitting here. Anyways, so we're talking probably like 150,000 or so
It's
to
140,000.
get to the 2%,
We need 140,000.
which, what you just outlined.
You found this 100,000 in a matter of a minute.
Yeah, I don't think it's hard to get there.
You don't
by the
think
way.
without hurting you think we could get there with talking about these reserves and like
Well,
I
rolling
mean,
stuff over?
And let me throw one more thing out.
3,000 is not bad.
And again, I'm really pleased to be able to have this discussion too, that this list does not include all of the things we budgeted to reserve.
Right,
Everything in 2024, we taxed and budgeted to reserve, so recreation master plan, water reserves, sewer reserves, that's all done. This is above and beyond that.
240,000, that'd be great.
So you have another $700,000 you budgeted to reserve successfully, it's done, it's in the bank.
I'll just add to that it's my recommendation that we get there somehow to the 2%.
I'd like 2%.
It just seems like we have an opportunity to get there with the way our town is financially right now because of the work we've done in administration. And I think we have that opportunity to help our citizens in a way.
I would agree for 2 reasons. One, it would be consistent across the 4 years of this term. And secondly, the 2% is less than current inflation, right?
Anyways, that's my opinion.
So,
Councillor Court,
Oh, no, it's Mayor's.
Mayor?
so essentially, if we look at reducing by 4%, that 6% assessment, we need $140,000. So between those accounts that you talked about, there's about 90,000. So would it be such a bad thing to take 50,000 from the utilities?
Well, I would say you have a $360,000 investment surplus last year.
And, well, but
Take
you
it all
have it,
from that.
you have it in the utilities right now, so
Right.
therefore I'm talking about that account,
But if we
because
took
that's
the
where.
remainder out of that, that wouldn't offend me
So-
administratively for a second.
So, personally, I think if we were taking exactly that, the campground reserve, the 26,000, the wages in electrical, 19,700. The wages from the golf course, 57,700. And, another, the remainder from the major utility capital from the, investment. You have your money.
Counselor Court?
Just a quick question,
Amazing.
the surplus from solar plant, where does it go into that?
Actually, in the solar this year, between our distribution access tariff, we were a little bit under, we collected a little under budget. We were in a deficit position in the whole electrical. We were about $70,000 in deficit over the whole electrical because our rates were, our DAT was a little bit up and our collection was a little bit under budget. So we didn't lose in the department, we were just between budget, we had a small deficit.
So altogether, we're still okay.
Yeah, we're fine, we're
Okay.
okay, but we did have a deficit between solar and electrical this year.
Counselor Burton?
But we did some investment too. We did some capital
Yep.
improvement that ate up some of the budget.
So I had earlier made the comment that all the money in utilities reserves should stay there because of the gaping hole we're trying to fill. But you're saying that we have a block of interest that came to us that you've arbitrarily put there.
Correct. It didn't have to go in that account at
It
all.
could
I
have
could have
been
kept it
separate.
outside that line, because it is not related to utilities.
No.
Okay, because I'd be really adverse to taking
Yeah,
the money
no,
we
I
collect on
agree.
utilities and throwing
Yes.
it somewhere else, but we're
No.
not
No,
doing that.
we put it
No.
in there thinking that would be the priority of council, but I could have listed it as a separate line item. And then you would have just had, 700,000 in
agree.
that. Yeah,
Without any other direction, that is
Yes.
exactly where I would have put it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like I said, that doesn't offend me at all. We could quite readily get you down to mitigating all the assessment increase based on that anomalous surplus last year.
So then I'd be in favor of doing what the mayor said and
Yeah.
what Jeff just said, with the exception that I think we need to pass the provincial increase in education tax on without compensating
Yeah.
Oh,
for
well,
it.
we
That's-
have no.
that's not
no-
on us.
No,
Just
no,
in and out.
I totally
So I guess the
agree.
question
Well, we
is,
have no choice. It's
are we
a
better off
full-
doing it the way the mayor just suggested, or just doing it all from the investment account? Does it make a difference?
Well,
It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, really, it doesn't. I mean,
You can
things
move
like
it.
the campground reserve, if that 26 goes in it or not the end of the world.
Well, I guess, are we all in agreement that we want to hit that 2%?
I really feel that's what we said we would do.
Yep.
Let's be true to what we said.
So let's leave it up to administration to get it there?
So next week in the bylaw, the mill rates will be pulled down
Yeah,
so that on the average, we have that 2% revenue increase.
and
overall.
that's what we said we wanted.
Jill, are we on side there? You're the one that gets to do this, so we're,
And if anybody complains about the 2%, you say, well, with the increased
Less than
assessments,
inflation,
it could have been
don't complain.
6.49, like some of our neighbors did last year.
Well, you know what we will do? We will do a proper education newsletter,
Yeah.
as we always do around that time. Once we pass a mill rate, we will explain why it is the way it is. And that's what I do every
I
year.
hope our citizens would be grateful for the 2%.
Yeah.
And to
I had people
understand it.
complain about the 2% last year, and I said, Calgary was 11 or something, like, give me a break.
Counselor Burton, and then we'll move on.
To be clear, I support 2% if it doesn't
Touch the
compensate
education.
for that education. I want that completely separate, like you said, with an education piece saying,
Yeah.
here's their number.
Yeah,
so to be clear, we will look at the 2% tax revenue increase
From the
and set the mill
municipal.
rate based on that. We will not consider the education tax at all when we set the
No.
mill rate.
please
That's a
don't,
flow through.
yeah.
Okay.
Anything else on this, guys? Awesome. Anything else, Jeff?
I-
Okay,
Good work.
well,
Mayor?
Yes.
I want to thank you guys for Jill and Håkan and all your financial department, because honestly, in a time where there is so much uncertainty still, we have a budget that makes sense.
One more thing, and I'm not saying it to, I want to be very humble in this, but one of the things that helps when we get looking at these budgets is the sewer plant project, for example. When we
Yeah.
built this budget a year ago, we were planning on hundreds of thousands of dollars of financing costs
Yeah.
in 2025.
It shivered my
project.
timbers, you know it did.
And we took it all out. Right, like we're in this really cool situation where we were able to take 6 figures worth of interest expense that we anticipated and pull it right out of the budget. And so, no, we're so
Yeah.
lucky with this project going forward right now, depending on where the tenders land, knock on wood. But those kind of things really helped with this budget.
Yeah.
We've got major capital works
Yeah.
going on, golf course, clubhouse, sewage plant, everything else we're doing. We must be the envy of communities our size in this province
Honestly,
because of.
I really don't care to be the envy. I care to have money for our town to be
agree with you.
sustainable.
Well, no,
That's what I care about.
Well, I care about that too, but the fact that we've managed to do it
Yeah, well,
in the face of adversity, high inflation, on, is remarkable and good work, you know?
All right, guys, on to donation policy. Josh is gonna give us a breakdown of how we're gonna fix this thing.
Well, I could hand
Once and for all.
Just a primer tonight, not the conclusion.
Those are the donation numbers for the last decade. 2025 is not included as it's not a good comparable with the finished years. So this discussion is just to get some preliminary direction about where an amended donation policy might go. So what administration did is had a look at the data, which you have in front of you, and then also reviewed the donation policy as it is written, and considered your feedback as well, and then just started to kind of think about what are the key issues and maybe what direction you want to go. So I think the first question here, because everybody, I think to one degree or another, has expressed frustration with the application-based structure and that it's not functioning. I think that was certainly based on good intentions, wanting to be prepared budget-wise for those that might come through the door. But it doesn't appear to align with a lot of groups' practices. Maybe there's an inability to plan far enough ahead. There's certainly mixed messaging about how donations are handled because, well, it's application-based, but people come and they get what they ask for. So, that speaks a bit louder.
so true.
So there was also it's a bit unclear how you want to go forward with waived fees or donations in kind. The current policy actually doesn't distinguish between those and cash in terms of how those are to be handled and reflected in the budget and in expenditures as the year goes on. So if those are to be treated differently, we'd want to get that reflected going forward. And then schools, I would say, and just Erin did a great job on this. She went through council minutes and got all of the resolutions into the budget. Schools receive a lot of donations. They're provincially funded entities. The people in town are already funding schools. And then you also have a joint use planning agreement, which is about to be revised and going forward. So there's a question there as well. And then obviously donations being a show of public support from a municipality. How do you want to handle things like religious causes, social causes? This policy mentions political organizations. They're treated differently, but not social or religious groups. So there's an inconsistency there, which we'd like council to address. So maybe first, the first question here can find my question. So what degree of flexibility does council want in a donation policy going forward? So this is to say, when you're weighing whether to provide funding to a cause or not, do you want a lot of subjectivity, a lot of context-based, or do you just want it based on the policy? So the refusal is based on the policy.
Councillor Burton's had a comment before we get into this.
So when I had originally pushed for a policy rather than, as it comes to us, it was primarily budget that I had in my mind.
Right.
So it seemed like you said, whoever shows up, we hand it to them, and I think, well, that had to come from somewhere. I don't remember budgeting for that, right? And then ironically, some of them, after we put the policy in place, we discovered that there are other groups that we actually do budget for, but they should be treated like they're asking for a donation. In other words, they come every year, and so we stick them in the budget. But they're really asking for a donation, same as anybody else. So I think my preference would be that it is budget-based, and this is very good, by the way, whoever
Yeah.
put this together. I don't agree with all of it, but I think it's very good. So, and I'll get back to that. But I think we should have it budget-based. So I like the suggestion of whether it's, we have a 6-month budget, and when it's gone, it's first come, first served. First come, first served doesn't seem to fit either, though, Joshua, with, like you say, well, our template doesn't match theirs, so maybe their budget's in a different year than ours is, and, or they get a new board at different times and we get new boards here. And so you say, well, they don't really fit. But I still don't like first come, first served. Like, it shouldn't be a race to get here, and whoever gets here first gets all the money, and whoever happened to be last because their board meeting was on Thursday instead of last Saturday, they don't get the money. To me, that seems arbitrary. Then the other comment I would make, so in other words, I like it budget-based without being completely arbitrary, though, as a race. And that's why I'd suggested if they're all in at the same time, then we can pick and choose. But my other comment is on the in-kind donation. Here's maybe where I disagree just a little bit. And that's that I think it does, let's say we charge, I'll just make it up, we charge $600 for renting the swimming pool for a private event. And the high school comes to us and they say, for our non-alcoholic grad, we want to have an event at the pool. Would you donate the fee? So of course I would say absolutely we do, but what does it cost us? So it costs us something. In that one, we do have to have lifeguards, so there's more of an expense there, but it may not be the whole 600. And if I use a different example where they want to use a ball diamond and nobody shows up from the town, they just simply use the ball diamond, it didn't really cost us our rental rate. And I suspect that your rental rates are in this, when we add up what we totally donate. When it's an in-kind donation, we use our normal rental rate
Yes, that's right.
as the amount. And so I think these numbers are a little bit inflated.
Yeah.
And like I said at our last meeting when we talked about this, I think in-kind should be treated differently. It costs us pennies on the dollar to do it. When they're using a facility,
But it needs to be reflected in a budget somewhere. Because those
Well,
are
it-
true costs to the town.
the pennies do, but not the dollars. So, right? So if it costs, let's say we rent something for $100 and it costs us $20 in utilities. The 80, I don't think should be, we don't budget for that 80, so why do we show it as a contribution? In other words, we don't budget, we're going to rent out the pool for that hour. Well, maybe we weren't going to rent if they wouldn't have come and asked. Do you know what I mean? Like, seems like there's a lot of soft costs there. Do you have a?
Just a quick question. If the fees were based on demonstrated costs, would you be comfortable using those?
Yes.
Okay.
But, and again, I think that's two different fees then. We have a fee if I want to rent it, I pay the $600. But if we're donating it in kind to some social group like the grad class, then it's not the $600, it's our estimate that it really cost us, in that case, $300 because of extra chlorine or lights or lifeguards or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Councillor Burton, then imagine a group that wants to use, like the schools, they want to use the theater, the gym down there. There's still a cost to clean it for custodian. There's still a cost of the lights. Still a cost to keep the bathroom clean. So how do you figure that one out?
Well,
Those are maybe soft costs.
so I'm agreeing, because I'm acknowledging with you that those costs are real.
They are. But they're already in the budget somewhere because the custodian is already paid. But still.
But that's part of my point, is if we're already paying the custodian, like, there's some amount that it really costs us, and I know that's going to be a guess. But I think we can have two different rates. Because I don't want to, like, let's say we donate the main hall in this building, and I don't want to, it's $1,000. Well, we don't say, oh gosh, now that they've used it, we're out $1,000 in our budget, and these gentlemen are trying to find $1,000 somewhere. That
No,
doesn't
it's-
happen.
It's already factored
It's
in.
already factored in.
I agree.
So there's a very small variable cost associated with use, typically. And some are more than others. Like I say, the pool's more than a ball diamond, but I'm just trying to look at that actual variable cost rather than the whole normal fee that we would charge the public.
But on the other hand,
Counselor Court.
I somewhat agree with you. Any arguments we've ever had when we think we need to charge for a play or whatever else, I hear this all the time. We're already taxpayers, we're already paying for this. Why do we have to pay extra for it? So I kind of like what you're talking about, the soft costs, more expensive costs. I think as a community, we need to encourage the use of this, even if we have to subsidize it a little bit, maybe. Now, if somebody's in there trying to make money, that's a totally different
It's a
story.
different thing, yeah.
Josh?
I'd just like to ask the chair if we could pause this.
Okay. You guys okay with that?
yeah,
We'll come back to that.
thanks.
We have a 6 o'clock delegation here. The Egg Society is going to come and give us their annual report, I believe, and talk about some Heritage Days events, I believe. And, yeah, come on up and
Figure that out.
we'll get started.
Yeah. You ride in on your horses, or?
Well, good evening to all, you all.
Is this
and thank you for
presentation
coming.
called The Rose and the Thorns?
Okay. Okay, if not, I can give. More over here. Okay. And I can give. Thank you. Great, Sean. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
I got one here.
Thank you, we can share it. We can share it.
And I can share one.
We can share it, it's okay, we're good. Yeah, we're good. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Go ahead and get started.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eric Lemieux, and I am the president of the Cardston Egg Society. Today with me, I have Mr. Frank Bevins. He's the vice president of the society, and we have Mr. Sean Pitcher. He's secretary treasurer, and we have Karen Pitcher. She's our youth volunteer. We had our AGM right here in these town hall quarters last fall, and we've got a new board with we're pretty diverse, and I'd like to give you a little update on what we've done and some of our leadership. The attendance of the Alberta Association of Agricultural Societies Conference in Edmonton is really a big thing for our society and all agricultural societies throughout Alberta. There's 281 egg societies. And this is where we go to brainstorm and help one another, collaborate, and we learn about funding and where to find funding and how to help one another with events. And so, we attended this conference the first part of February, I believe it was February 7th through the 8th, and we, man, this was really great for our team. There were 7 attending board members there, and 4 of them were brand new. Had no idea this happened. And our Egg Society in the past hasn't really taken much interest in this, and I think it's the best thing that we've done since we've been on the board. And we had a great collaboration, and we rented a Airbnb and spent 2 full days together learning, sharing, and building unity. And this experience was transformational, allowing us to grow not just as individuals, but as a team committed to serving our society with purpose and professionalism. And some of the things that we got out of that were governance practice, financial accountability, event and program development, strategic planning, and community engagement. And these insights already have a positive impact on our board's operation and long-term vision. Some of our board consists of 4 First Nations members, 2 women, 4 residents from the town, 1 resident from the Blood Reserve, and 4 residents from Cardston County. This diverse composition ensures a broad range of voices and experiences are represented, helping us make inclusive and informed decisions. The strength of our board lies in both its skill and its representation. The trust and engagement of our membership as a result of this renewed commitment to leadership and collaboration, we've built strong trust and support from our membership. The board is unified, focused, and committed to the continued success of the Agricultural Society and the community it serves. We thank the mayor and council for their continued support and partnership. And at this time, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Mr. Pitcher.
This last 12 months have been a big change for the Ag Society. One of our greatest success and encouragement is our new contract with the town. And part of that new contract holds the Ag Society accountable for some of the things that go on there. So I want to go quickly over some of the requirements out of our contract. We've left you with a copy of our insurance policy, which allows us to have a $3 million liability, which is in our contract. Along with that, we also gave you a copy of our financials from Price and Common, not holding just this last year's financials, but shows the year before that too. And our certificate of good standings from the province of Alberta. I had it emailed to me about a half hour ago. They don't send it out till June, so we happen to get that one done right away. And along with that, I'd like to give a financial report about some of the changes and some of the things that are happening up at the Agrodome. So in this report is outlined that's to increase the revenue experience in the Cardston Ag Society over the past 12 months, as well as the strategic investments made to support continued growth and community engagement. Number 1, we started what is our hay sales revenue growth. In August of 2024, we launched a hay sales project with a profit projection of $8,000 for the year. As of today, our profit is approaching the $20,000, and we are on track to easily triple our original projections. This reflects a careful planning, local support, and a favorable market for that area, that conditions. Number 2, we increased our boarding revenues. We have seen a 4-fold increase in the number of boarders compared to this time last year. This demand led us to invest into new stalls and new water infrastructures, expanding the capacity, improving our services there. We also entered in, number 3, is our winter boarding agreement with our racehorse owners. Through new agreement with the Lethbridge Racetrack owners, we brought in 25 racehorses over the winter months. These horses will now return back to the tracks in the summer. This initiated a significant boost in winter revenue and utilizing the agrodome through the winter months. 4, we invested into roping stock and an event revenue. We have purchased our own roping stock, which has enabled us to host weekly roping practices and monthly jackpot roping events. This program is projected to bring approximately $35,000 annual and to continue growing in popularity. We have hosted 2 high school rodeos in the past. The most recent one was in April here a few weeks ago that generated a net income of $16,000. We're excited to host another event coming in September. These rodeos provide both financial benefits and a strong community involvement. Together with these initiatives demonstrates our commitment to financial sustainability, increasing programs, and ongoing facility development. We thank the town for their support. Is there any questions the town or council may have on our financials at this point?
Mayor, Councilor Britton.
I want to congratulate you on your presentation and how you have increased your revenue and the board that seems to be more united and more capable of working together with a very strong governance model at this point. So well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Britton.
Are one of you going to comment on grants?
That's in another report coming up, but yes.
I'll wait then.
We'll, any more questions at the end of the reports would be great. I don't want to rob something from Frank.
No, if it's
Okay,
somewhere.
thanks.
Thanks.
I've got the Agrodome Improvement Report. This report outlines the improvements completed at the Agrodome since our last update. These upgrades have significantly enhanced the facility's functionality, safety, and overall user experience. So these are completed improvements that we've done. Arena sand replacement. New sand was installed in the arena at a cost of $10,000. Interior insulation and painting. Interior of the arena was spray foamed the ceiling and painted for improved energy efficiency and aesthetics. That was at a cost of $141,000. That was part to grant money there was used. Sound system installation. We got a new sound system up there installed for better coordination and audience experience for our audience at a cost of $15,000. Stall and water infrastructure. We installed some new stalls along one of our existing barns up there and put on concrete pads and waters at a cost of $55,000. Bunk line feeders and panels, a new bunk line feeder and livestock panels at cost of $25,000 for our cattle. So in total investment since our last report, we've invested $249,000 into the Agrodome facility up there. We appreciate the continued support of the town helping us improve these essential facility, and these upgrades ensures that the Agrodome remains safe and versatile and a valuable space for agricultural events and other community events. I'll turn the time back to Sean for upcoming projects report.
Councilor Granger's had a question for you.
Yep.
Yeah, good job, guys, on all of that stuff. From my time on the Ag Society Board, I remember a couple of things on the building, and I just wondered if that was previously done, because I didn't hear you talk about it. One was roof leakage, and the other thing I remember is some of the doors needed to be fixed, and I just wondered what happened to those.
They're still on the to-do list, but the doors haven't been fixed. But with the spray foam, it has sealed up the bottom of it, but there's still some missing rivets on the top that need to be taken care of. But other than that, anything else from that report? Do you remember, Sean, that got completed?
Councillor Granger, I have a whole report I'll send to you of what we did with that report. It was sent for that grant money to be able to get that spray foam done. And that report that was done by Televera,
Yeah.
we used that report as part of our application to that grant money, which really significantly helped us obtain those fundings. And so that structure of the roof is a lot better, but continuing fixing the building is going to be an ongoing effort of our Ag Society and our board, and we're moving forward steps at a time. But the improvements we made in the last 12 months have been huge compared to where we were sitting at that moment.
There's still a few things left that you want to do.
We spent quite a bit on doors,
Yeah.
but we still have the shopping list is a mile long,
Yeah,
but we sure have been chopping away at it very successfully at this point.
yeah, okay, no, I mean, the town was glad to participate in that and get the report generated, and I was just curious as to where a couple of those noteworthy things in my mind sat.
I'll send you that report that we sent in and got back on that, so you can see from the report what has been accomplished there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Along with that, to keep this building up into the shape and condition that we need to have it at, and to keep it in that condition, we need to generate some revenue. Grant money is not just handed out. We have to match funds for the grant money. And so these projects are very difficult for an ag society who has a very limited amount of cash to be able to match some of these grant money. So our first strong work is to try to make our society revenue account a lot larger. With more money, we can have more projects on our plate. And so these are some upcoming projects that we would like to look towards, and these upcoming projects are there in place to help us generate more revenue. The spray foam, we try to follow our cost of heating that building from the year before to this year, and as roughly as we can get the cost, because this winter might not have been as cold as last winter, and the cost of heat might have been a little bit different on the unit rates, but we see a significant savings of around $7,000 in the first year of the spray foam in costs of our utilities. We look at that as an ongoing year-to-year forever of revenue going back into our account instead of leaving our account. So those are the projects that we focus on as a board. The one project we're focusing on very strongly at this point is the solar panel installation it's called CME. I can't remember what it's called, there it is, Strategic Energy Management for Industries. We're on the last stage of filling out that application and we're qualifying for $250 million, 100% granted,
50,000.
250,000. Well, I have plans for that too.
You have
That
them
coming
in-
down the road.
If you have the million to
250.
share with us, okay?
$250,000 for that grant, 100% granted to put solar system up to help with our utility costs and the future of what the Ag Society needs to have to keep our funding in place. Not only do we need to make money, but we need to save money is important. So that is a really, really good project that we're within months of having that finalized. When that gets finalized, we will approach the town and the administration to get approval for that before we go ahead.
I just had a question on that. Is there a worry about when you're installing panels and then having to fix the roof?
So that's a great question, and hopefully when we get to that point, that's the time that we would have the roof structure fixed in support of those paneling at the
Wait
same
for the
time.
panels to go on there, then it's like, oh, I gotta tear them off and fix, so.
These projects are gonna be done with engineers and professionals. We're just gonna sit in our truck and watch.
There you go, all right.
Okay, so great question, but yeah, they're well aware. They've been up there and seen the building. They've worked with Leonard, and they've met with him and worked with him, and so when this project is ready to go forward, it will be done by those that know what they're doing.
Cool, thank you. Councilor Britton?
So, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that grant money typically is for capital expenditures, and it's harder for your society to have operating money. And so when we look at insulating the roof better and having solar panels offset the electrical, that really helps on your cash flow, so that you have, because that's the hardest to come by is your cash flow, is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. So to help really quickly with our grant money, To be able to be in compliance with the province of Alberta, we must fill out a whole report. And if we fill that report and we come in compliance with them, we receive $17,000 just to be in compliance with them. The province of Alberta has $11.5 million to allocate to the 281 ag societies throughout the province. So that money's up for grabs. And so right off the bat, by just having our report in, which gives us our financials, our AGM, and our minutes showing that the financials was approved, if we can send all that in, we get $17,000 check. From there, Alberta takes the rest of that money and they divvy it out into 3 different categories. One is leadership improvements and scholarship funding. So our trip to Edmonton cost us close to $5,000, but 70% of that is paid through grant money coming back. So it was a very, very cheap cost for what we got out of it. So that's something as a board we really, really want to focus on. And as new board members come on every year, we want to really push them to go. From the year before, Frank, Eric, and I attended that conference on our own dime. And we saw the advantage that conference had, and we pushed it. And by having 7 out of 9 of our board members and directors show up to that conference was amazing. And the improvement that's done has been significantly. Along with that, scholarships are paid back. Any scholarship that we as a board put out, 70% of that's paid back. Last year in our financials, we gave away $5,000 scholarship, 5 separate scholarships for $1,000 to kids to go off to school. They had to write a report or an essay to us, and we chose 5 of those kids to get a $1,000 scholarship that the Ag Society funded for them. So that's been something really great. So we receive 70% of all our expenditures under leadership and under those scholarship funds. Any events, like our high school rodeo events, our practice nights and our jackpots and any events that we have, the expenditures that are qualified there, we send that into the province, and they give us 24% back in any of expenditures on events only. So that helps a lot. And then the last ones are utilities, and our utilities are around 11%. The province helps ag societies give back that utility costs. So it's kind of a whole broad thing. So that grant averages, it depends how much we spend, depends how much we get back. But that averages around $50,000 a year from the province of Alberta, which sounds great, but there's 11.5 million available. So we want more. And to get more, we got to spend more. And to spend more, we got to make more. And so that's why our focus at this time is to increase our revenue, to be able to have more events, more expense, and more grant monies. Special grants that we search down are the grants that help with the spraying of the agrodome, and that's on applications we fill out and needs, and that comes also from our government, but through a whole different thing. So grants we're chasing all the time, but the Ag Society grants are through our operation, and that's the only way we get grants that help with our expenditures. Other than that, spray foaming, I mean, one of the biggest costs to get that $100,000 is we had to put up $25,000 of our own cash to qualify for that. And then to finish off the project, it really came over $40,000 of our own cash. To pull $40,000 out of our own cash is very, very hard on the Ag Society. And so, but to not do that, we can't get the $100,000. So we're very much hoping to try to build some kind of reserve of funding that will help us qualify for grant money. Because if we don't have cash, we don't get grants.
That's true.
So that's where we had. The other big project that we're looking at is we've been discussing, we're at the very beginning development stage of this, is a future campground development. We are in the early planning stages of a new 75-site campground designed for seasonal campers, specifically targeting individuals and families involved in the rodeo and equine activities. It's cut off there, so I can't remember what it said. But we find that the rodeo, there's a lot of people in Canada and Alberta that head to Arizona through the winter months so they can continue to ride and rodeo through the cold seasons. Vice versa, there's a lot of people in southern Alberta and California and Arizona wanting to come to Canada during the summer months because of the hot conditions down there. We feel that we can attract quite a few of those individuals to come and find Cardston as a hub as they come and follow the rodeo circuit throughout Alberta. We see that as a huge potential, not only as the Ag Society to have a generated income, but also as this community in this town to help businesses to bring in outside snowbird effect into Cardston for the rodeo crew. So we feel and have a very strong desire to make this happen and go forward. I think it would help our community and our Ag Society funding, and it'd be a huge benefit to this area. So that's one of the projects we're working towards. Those are the two main big projects. We have a dozen other little ones, but any questions at this point?
Anything else for the society, guys?
Okay.
You're doing great.
I was gonna say, thanks for a breath of fresh air almost coming and giving us your report, and it's very encouraging what's going on up there, and it seems like things are just taking off now, and we look forward to the years to come.
Thank you. I think Frank has a final report, don't you?
All right, well, I'll say that again after.
Just on the events report, some of the things that we've been doing. So this will kind of outline last year, high school rodeos. We had two high school rodeos hosted annually, one held in April and one in September. They net revenue about $16,000 apiece. These events attract athletes from across the region and youth development in those programs. Weekly practices, we run a team roping practice weekly, breakaway roping practice weekly, heliomatic roping practice weekly, barrel racing jackpots, a monthly team roping jackpots. To all our practice nights, kids 18 and under are free to come up and rope and have use of the animals and the building. This policy that we have ensures equitable access to support skill development in young rodeo athletes in our community. Hosted activities as part of Cardston Heritage Days, celebrating local Western heritage. Southern Circuit events, they held 8 Southern Circuit rodeos there over a 4-month period. These events brought competitors and families and fans to Cardston, contributing to our local economy. Chinook Rodeo Association timed event rodeo. In November, they came and held a Chinook rodeo there. While a full Chinook rodeo is not scheduled at this time, the event was well attended and showed strong demand for off-season competition. We have the 4-H show and sale hosted annually up there at the Agrodome. This event brings businesses, auctioneers, and community members together with $375,000 in livestock sold at that. All proceeds benefit youth participants, supporting their education and continued involvement in agriculture. Community impact. The Cardston Agricultural Society continues to grow its presence as a leader in youth rodeo, agricultural programming. This inclusive access, frequent events, and support of major youth development programs like 4-H, we're driving both community engagement and economic benefit. At our high school rodeos, we kind of have a little fun door prize also. Last year we gave away a $500, we call it Cardston Cash, where we draw out a name, and that those kids that come to Cardston, they can get that prize, but it has to stay here in Cardston. They show receipts that they've spent that money here. This past year we gave away 5 $100 ones, and so they go spend money in town, submit their receipt, and we reimburse them from our coffers. So that kind of helps keep some money here in the community. I mean, it's already a boost to the community, but.
Councilor Burton?
So Frank, how many, on a typical, let's say a high school rodeo or a Southern Circuit, whatever, how many people do you estimate come from outside of our local community?
For a high school rodeo, what do you think?
Guessing, but what's your
Yeah,
estimate?
well, for the high school rodeo kids, what would you say, Karen, for that's running? We probably got 5 to 8 Cardston kids that are high school rodeoing, and then the rest all come from our district.
How many of the rest?
There would be over, yeah, I was gonna say maybe 300, but,
We bring in 200 to 300 families
yep.
into the community.
They bring all their
That's what I mean.
grandparents, parents.
And they spend the night, and it's a 2-day rodeo, and so they have one day, spend the night, and do another rodeo the next
We
day,
have
so,
10 of those rodeos, which you're telling us, that's a big impact on the town economically.
yes, yep.
Currently, we're approved for 2.
We'd love to get more.
But I
but
mean,
yeah,
I'm including the Sark rodeos and
Right,
stuff like.
Right. Right.
Awesome.
Okay.
Anything else, guys?
Yes.
Okay.
We only
It'll
get them
be
once a
brief.
year, so they're making the most of
Yeah,
it.
I'm
So,
all for it.
We'd like to acknowledge the new lease we've signed with you. At this time, I'd like to present a check on behalf of the Ag Society to establish our good relationship with the town. We've decided to pay the lease in full for the next 25 years. And I'd like to present that check to the mayor and Mr. Shaw, if I may.
You're looking for a picture?
Yeah, maybe we should.
Steph,
Say, wow.
Steph, do you want to come over there?
Put your thumb over the,
Okay, all right.
Yeah, have Council Burton do it, and I'll get the picture for you.
25-year lease, that's good.
Come on over
Tie
there.
that up right now. Okay.
Get that into
Let's get
investing.
the right distance here, all right, hats, brims are a good place. Frank, you okay with that? Sure. Okay, all right. I don't know. 1, 2, 3. I'll take a couple more to be sure. Okay, great.
That's a flying check.
Well, it didn't bounce, so.
Yeah.
I think you'd.
Funny, that's a good
Doesn't
one.
bounce a check anymore.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
If their watch doesn't work, then they got a problem.
Thanks, guys, for everything, again.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Say hi to the one. It's rather impressive.
That was impressive.
180 degrees.
Oh, my nice. Really
Big
impressive.
check.
Well,
Awesome. That was refreshing, I guess.
Well, I would say it's rather impressive to see how a committee that was struggling has been able to get so much unity
Yeah.
in their team and so much strength in their governance and finances that they can start to see themselves as something that is sustainable as an organization. So it's refreshing, as you say.
If I could make a comment on that governance, so, like I mentioned before, we completely redid all the policies, making sure that they were harmonizing with their bylaws and with the town bylaws and the town policies. They're all posted now on their website so that everybody has access to them. And before it was, can anybody find them in a filing cabinet somewhere? The answer was no, because I asked for them for 2 years and didn't get them. So now they're all available on the website. I attend their meetings still as a member of the policy committee, and they've asked me to give governance training at the start of every meeting. So they're very, very serious about bringing their and the meetings that they go to. One thing they didn't mention, they're having, the president of the Provincial Association has agreed to come and give a 2-day training to their board in person here this summer. Well, in September. So anyway, the governance level has increased dramatically, I would say.
Well, that's the key to their success, really,
We have a full-time, not a full-time, but I mean a designated secretary. They called him secretary treasurer. He used to be, he's not. Now we have a separate secretary. She gets paid to come and keeps all the minutes, distributes them. So it's a new entity.
I was just gonna add before we go back to this council or the donation, were they not gonna request something for Heritage Days? Is that a miss by them or?
It understood they were, but
Okay, at the last meeting, when there was such a request, if you remember, Councillor Brown spoke and said that if they wanted to participate with the power, it was,
I think they were looking for more funds for their events, no?
yeah, if I could comment on that. So there were two things. One, they were offering to participate and help
the
any way they
powwow
could with the
was
powwow.
volunteering.
But I do know from having been at their meetings that they feel like they're not able to provide the same activities that they did a couple of years ago because the third-party costs are so high. So for example, bringing in, yeah, insurance, but the biggest one is the livestock. So some of those have gone up like 300, 400%, which is why now they're buying them, because they literally couldn't afford to pay somebody else anymore. So I know that if this council were to offer, we give what, 5,500 or 15,500?
17, isn't it?
14.3, I think, specifically for heritage. I can tell you exactly here, Counselor, but
That's correct, and it's been like that for the
Yeah,
last 10 years.
you know,
the
if,
same
if
amount.
we were to,
Agreed.
and they're just they're not asking, they didn't ask for whatever reason, but if I could be so bold, I can tell you that they feel like they're about 5,000 short to put on a Heritage Days that really knocks your socks off. For example, the truck, they call it the mud
Mud
bogging
bogs.
or whatever, they couldn't afford to offer like really prizes, and so that cut down the number of people that want to come. And just all these it's not that their costs have gone up, because they're all volunteer. It's paying other people, and they really do feel like and they didn't ask me to do this. I'm just saying I know that they feel like they're about $5,000 short to put on the kind of Heritage Days that everybody loves so much.
With the surpluses that we've just been talking about, could we not bump them to 20,000?
I
Is
I
it
know
wrong
that
of
would
us?
be
Sorry.
massively appreciated, and I think reflects, like I say, that they have to pay out.
Counselor Court?
Oh, no, I was just checking the time.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, is that wrong of us though to just assume, like, should they be requesting that increase? Like, or are we just gonna say,
Well, I mean, I've been sitting there when they're talking about where do
I
we get
just
the
thought of it, I was
5,000.
gonna bring it up and I forgot when they were here.
I know from even the time that I was there, which is like a year and a half ago now, that they were struggling with the 14,000. that
Yeah,
they
it was
were
the
getting.
last 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm aware of it as well. It would have been nice if they had remembered but.
I
we're
suspect
the-
maybe
we're the
they were
master-
just reticent to ask.
Council is the master of its own budget, and if the two of us recognize that there's a need, why don't we just give it to them? Because now's the time to do it.
Well, I was gonna say,
If we added it for our next meeting, if we stuck 5,000 in there specifically for Heritage Days.
Yeah,
would we want to bump up to 20? Is that what we're talking about?
that's what I'm saying. It's at 14,
14.5, I just looked at
14.5.
14.5, yeah.
Bump
When
it up
you-
to an even 20.
Yeah.
Mayor?
When you really see how much more the power is going to cost, I can say that 5,000 is reasonable to bump it up. Everything has gone up.
So what's our move here on that then, I guess?
Well, I would bring you that in the budget. It feels like and
Yeah.
you would have the chance to approve or disapprove it in the budget next week.
Okay. Everyone okay with that?
I mean, now's a good time to be doing something like this.
It's the time,
It's the opportunity.
Yep, yep. no problem.
Do we want to finish this donation policy before we eat? I know we kind of started it.
No, I don't want to compete against food.
All right, I'll take a motion for a break.
Good call.
I will move
All in
a
favor?
15-minute break for a
Okay,
meal.
all in favor? Thank you.
It's gonna be a speed council.
All right, I'll take a motion to come out
So
of,
moved.
break.
Yeah, so
By Counselor
moved.
Granger, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll turn the time over to Josh again.
Okay, so just quickly to follow up on something Counselor Court said. Returning to the in-kind donations. So from administration's standpoint, we handle efforts which benefit only a few with great caution. Essentially, because it's all taxpayer dollars, we want to make sure that everything staff are engaged in benefits as many residents as possible. So the way we handle that perceived or real inequality is to, you know, do it by appointments and bookings and charge fees. So I appreciate the feedback as far as doing more work on having cost-based fees. And just so you know, the updated JUPA requires that. So both parties, they can charge each other fees, but they're supposed to be based on cost. So that's work we're planning on doing anyway. Maybe I would go then to, I've just had a little bit of comment on going to a budget-based structure. Any other feedback? If budget-based wouldn't work, what are some other general control mechanisms that could be adopted to have some order around the process?
Counselor Burton,
Well,
Mayor.
Joshua, I want to ask you, in the table that you gave us, you say the median is 44,000
Right.
of total donation. Total less handy bus, I'm not so sure exactly. Is the handy bus part of the donation, or was it,
It is. It's 38,000, and that has been part of that GL the entire time. So I thought, just so you could see those funds which are distributed to all kinds of other groups separately, I made 2 columns.
all right, yeah, the handy bus, what you call social causes, then that's under that kind of heading pretty well.
Well, and I'd appreciate Counselor Burton's direction on these other kind of line items that should be treated like donations but aren't.
Yeah.
Is the handy bus one of them? Are there others?
Well, to me, it's a service to the community.
Right, and I wasn't suggesting that we not fund things like handy
No,
bus.
no.
I'm suggesting that
It's a service.
we be more aware of some of the things that, just when they've come up in council, you know, they were kind of without a passing thought, we had said yes, because they're already in the budget. But I don't think that's what should distinguish them. I think the fact that we're still donating the money, whether we're prepared to do it annually or not. And that should be part of, if we're going to budget, we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna spend,
Well, there's $6,000 without the handy bus,
yeah, so let's say we're going to spend
10,000.
$50,000 a year on donations, for argument's sake.
Yeah.
Then I would put it that we need to make sure that that number includes the ones that aren't as obvious, but we're still donating. In other words, if they don't have a right to requisition us, that's one test, right? If they can't requisition us, then arguably they're a donation. You know, so
And
There's
if they
some
can if they can requisition us, it shouldn't be considered a donation.
correct.
Should be a budget line item.
That's right. So if they can requisition us, it should be an outside of that, a budget line item. If they can't requisition us, and ultimately it's up to us, and really even the library would be included in that number, that's still,
But they are a true requisition, well, no, they're
Well, I
not.
don't know that they
They're
are.
not, they're not. The only requisition is the seniors.
so if it were me,
True
if it were me doing it, I would divide it on that line. I would say if they can requisition us, it's not here. If they can't, it's here. And we just, I mean, I realize it's just sliding numbers across the page, but I still think that helps us look at what types of things we're willing to fund, because that's your next question, right? Is, well, which ones qualify, which ones don't? And when I, if I may, Mayor, when I read through our policy as it is now, I think we do address some of those issues. We say, is it available to the public at large? I think that's important, and I know you raised the issue that we exclude political parties. For whatever it's worth, the LDS Church in our community donates lots of money to lots of things and can allow their building to be used if there's another community entity like a nonprofit that for some reason doesn't have they can get permission to use it even on what they call a short-term basis, except political parties. So you had asked why we made that distinction. I don't know why, but it feels right to me. And it's consistent with what feels right to the church with all their charitable givings and donations, and I'm sure in the billions of dollars. That's where they drew the line, is if it's for a political party, you cannot have it on our property, not even in the parking lot.
Interesting, okay. So, sorry, I had asked about budget-based or time-based, and if not, other ideas.
But, I mean, to carry on with what Councillor Burton says, his distinction would be that the library is considered a donation. But library is also part of that more regional kind of service that we share. I mean, the county is not at the same level, but we get funding from them. So do you consider them as a donation too?
No.
Yeah, right.
If, just as part of that, library is interesting because you have a bylaw which in the bylaw prescribes for them to,
Come to the
come
town
to
to
you
get the
for funding.
funding.
Yeah, so then maybe that's a hybrid or a,
yeah, it's a unique one.
requisition.
Yeah.
No, I don't call it a
Can't compel you,
requisition.
you have the
it's like a
option to
requisition.
not
It's
accept
not
it.
a donation.
It's but it's not a requisition. The only body that requisition is the senior.
but maybe that's
housing.
the difference, is if we've passed a bylaw that contemplates that,
Yeah.
that's different than the guys who show up every year. There's no bylaw. We've just always done it, and they expect that we always will.
Yeah.
To me, those should be line items, year by year.
Counselor Jensen.
And a donation is, you know, the Boy Scouts need something that year, but maybe not the same thing the next year. That to me is a donation.
Well, like like we were saying, the problem comes in with someone that comes at in November and wants the donation, and then someone comes in February and the money's all gone. And so I personally would like to see something where it's set up so that there's a lot of money, not a lot of money,
An
but
allotment.
a designated amount of
sum of
money.
money.
A designated amount of money for like maybe the first half or quarter or something, and then another amount for the second half or quarter of the year, so that it's more fair, and so there's still access to it for those who are, that don't know that they are going to be coming to the town requesting.
I guess my question is like, what is our biggest issue with this policy? Like, what is everyone's biggest concern?
Well, the timing,
Okay.
missing the,
Okay.
Oh. Right, Mayor?
The issue is, every time we have received a request, 90% of the time, they miss the deadline for having created that. So maybe what needs to be removed is that need for a deadline.
I agree.
Except the point of the deadline, I was the deadline guy.
Yeah.
The whole point of the deadline
Was to help us
was to put
budget.
it so we could budget.
I know.
That's why we had November 1st. It wasn't a random date.
But
Can I
So,
just-
so it really still goes back, in my mind, to budgeting.
But
yeah.
there also needs to be a cap, I think, of how much they
Right.
can ask, so that they can't,
exactly what I think.
we have
That's a cap.
6,000 in the
Leave it
kitty,
open.
and they can't request the full
I was
6,000.
just
They can
gonna-
maybe only ask a percentage, which,
I was gonna add that I think that we are having that issue, but I think it should be a budgeted, but I don't think there should be a timeline.
Right.
I think we should have, this is just a number, like a $50,000 budget line for donation. Like, I'm just looking at this here and have a cap on maybe the individual's requests, in a sense, so they can't come and request 50 grand, and it's all gone. Like, I am not in favor of timelines, it hasn't worked. I see the idea so that we could budget properly, but it just doesn't seem to be working. That's just my 2 cents. Councilor Granger?
I would agree with that. I think that's the issue that we've been having is we're not following our own bylaw because we're approving requests that are outside the deadline. So that's the biggest problem. I think if we set a budget amount, they can start applying after January 1st of a given year, and we should try and remove for consideration and put them into line items, those recurring normal year after year after year items as line items in the budget. That's not a donation to me, that's the town helping somebody out on a almost permanent basis. And if we got that stuff decluttered out of the donation pile,
Okay. So you would take away literally the handy bus,
yep,
that
Line
would be out. But the problem is the other large request is from schools. So that was the question. Schools are already funded through the taxation system. Do we carry on funding them for all what they need? That
I was
is
just gonna add,
maybe
is
the
that not what
question.
this
That's a
JUPA
good
thing is gonna
question.
help with?
If I might, so we need to, for some reason, the province extended JUPA again, but I'm meeting with Peter actually next week to
Right.
talk about trying to tidy this up, because I think the theater, for example, so using our facility for a long period of time, it's a high-value donation, while it's in kind, don't get me wrong, but those
Yeah.
kind of things, I think, should be found inside the JUPA. And so
Well,
that it's upfront,
yeah.
that that's what we're doing for each other, and it shows where you're scratching each other's back, and it's good leverage in future negotiations and all those things.
And I think with those, that the
Because
the
that's
schools
not
should know all these productions that are coming up or things, and then it could all, it's not like, oh, we need the building a week before they need to be in here. Like, this should all be talked about, whether it's the drama teacher coming in saying, these are the dates we want to the JUPA, and like, in that agreement. I'll add another thing after Councilor Granger here.
well, except that with the school boards, I mean, remember the $25,000 that we gave as a donation to the playground over at the elementary school? And I said it at the time, and I haven't changed my mind. I mean, the Department of Education or the province should be funding that. They shouldn't be coming to us for a donation. And we were kind of guilted into it, you know, but I thought it was inappropriate then.
Well,
I can't remember if I voted against it, but
yeah, but Councillor Granger, if you remember, the problem is not with the municipality there, but you're right, it's with the school system. But the school system is so that they have now two types of schools. The schools that are new and will get their new playground as part of the capital expense, and the old one who need to retrofit, and that is not part of the capital.
well, something's wrong with that
Expense.
picture.
I know.
Why do they come to us? We're a soft touch that way.
Well, because it's part of the community uses those fields too, and those kind of playground is used not only by the school, but also by the
Well,
community.
sorry, municipal government isn't set up to provide that kind of service in my
I
view.
don't say that you're wrong. I said that is a way the province has created
Then push
two
back.
different levels.
Say no, and, you know,
Anyways,
So-
we can solve that right now.
Sounds like we are all in agreement to not have a timeline on this. Is everyone okay with that?
So I am, if we put in some kind of a
Parameter?
cap.
Yeah, it
Because
has to be
the other reason for the timeline is
for the budget.
A
For the
cap on the
budget.
budget and a cap on the amount.
both, yes, because I don't want it to be a race, you know, there's a pool of money and whoever gets there first, too bad to be last. That's the other thing I was trying to get rid of, and so I think if we cap it, like if we went through all that work to get these numbers, we also will know how many came to us. So if we say, look, an average donation was $200, just for argument's sake. Okay, then that's the cap, or 500, whatever it was, doesn't matter what the number is, just, you know, we know the dollars, well, those are also associated with applications. So how many did we have that we approved of per year for the last 3 years? And then we say, okay, then whatever our budget is, we're gonna divide it by that, or some other, you know, rational working there to say, okay, then this is all you can get, it's not just first to the trough.
Yeah, and by the way, from my own background, that's the way the city of Whitehorse evolved with their donation policy. You could probably pluck it off their website. But, and in the engineering department, we were saying, wait a second, we're here for sewer and water and shoveling snow. That's all we're here for. We shouldn't be doing this for the Department of Education, and we stopped doing it. Council made a decision to limit the kind of things, and no school got a playground out of the city Whitehorse Council.
I was just gonna add the one thing before Josh just had his hand here. One other thing that frustrates me with the donations is how can we allow administration to take care of it more than coming to council? Like the little things, like whether it's $1,000, like I would rather administration take care of the little donations, and we don't even need to know about it.
No, you've got a limit.
Yeah, but it's capped at 500.
In kind even stuff, I would love for them to just take care of that.
I gave Counselor Kenley, if I might, Counselor
Yep.
Kenley, I gave him an example on Friday. So here's where we get in a weird place. So somebody, it's actually for your bake sale on Friday, Mayor.
Oh, lovely.
So somebody came by and said, could we get 10 tables for the auxiliary bake sale? And so the letter of the law, Jeff, would say, this is not a month before the event, get out. The answer is
Exactly.
no. But I'm like, what do I care? We'd like to support the ladies at the bake sale. I'll hear it from the mayor if I don't. And so,
Never mind the bylaw.
yeah, never mind the policy.
I mean, I'll pay for your table.
No, that's not it at all. But the point
It's
is,
just the little
the
things.
policy says I can't approve it
That's right.
because it was only a week and not a month before.
And nobody wants that.
And I don't want that at all. Like, we're happy to have
It's a pain
the
in the
volunteers
neck.
come grab some tables, take them for the 2 hours for the bake sale and bring them back. Happy to support that.
And honestly, as council, I don't even wanna know about it. Like, I don't care about,
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't say that nice, that's not me being
In a
mean. I don't-
positive way.
I don't care about someone having to borrow, whether it's $100 or tables, or like, I don't, administration should have more leeway, whether we come up with that, how that looks, on dealing with that kind of stuff. In my opinion. Josh was gonna speak, but you can,
Just to add
Yep.
to what you're saying, I think that's more the case, I agree with everything you said, and even more so on in-kind. So if they want to use the facilities, whatever they are, and they're not booked, and it meets our criteria, that
Yep.
they're not this, but they are that,
I don't even wanna hear about
and
it.
it doesn't really affect our cash budget. We're not, oh, you know, oh dear, how do we replace the cost of lending those tables out? That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I think our threshold on what you can do administratively for in-kind should be way higher on that than it is on cash.
And
I
more
agree.
flexible in the timing.
Well,
Josh,
again, if we do caps, then we don't need
We
timing.
don't.
Yeah, right.
Let's remove the timing. The timing has been nothing but a headache for
go
us
ahead,
all.
Josh.
Yeah, just, so that's all, very good feedback, and I'll just ask the final question here, which is part of a larger conversation certainly, but with, looking at a neutrality bylaw primarily to, protect the town, and its residents from liability, consistency is important. And so donating to religious and, social causes, and then refusing to do things in other ways of showing municipal support is inconsistent and can open up that liability again, which you're trying to get rid of. So as the current policy makes that distinction between political and the other two, which you think maybe it's based in the LDS practice, but just going forward from a municipal perspective, do you want these to continue to be treated differently? Or should there be some kind of restrictions?
None of
Councillor
this
Burton.
stuff.
So one comment, I remember Councillor Court commenting on it too, is that when we had that issue that the provinces were going to say, do we want to allow our council to be associated with a party, we said
said
no.
no.
And I think that's a valid thing to say no to, because
We wanted to stay.
it wouldn't create harmony in the council, those types of things. in my mind, I'm okay with there being, that we say we're not donating to political parties, because the exact same consideration, we don't want to be seen as one level of government favoring factions within another level of government. I think that's different than if the United Church came here and they wanted to borrow our tables, I'm 1,000% for it. The LDS Church, they usually don't borrow stuff, but I've got so many. But anyway, the point is, I'm okay with things if they meet our description, which is it has to be to all of the community. They have to actually spend the money. I'm just going by memory here. Help me, Josh. But could you just read those? There's a very clear. I thought it was worded just fine myself, but.
Yeah, and that's why I really didn't have any questions on it. I think it is a good list. And, you know, I think there'll be more narrowing down as we go forward. But it starts with demonstrating that the funding is being spent in the community.
Community, yeah.
So, sorry, it's split between the applicant has to demonstrate certain things and also what they're requesting.
Okay.
So the applicant has to be based in the town. They need to demonstrate the need, be an individual or nonprofit, use or distribute donation wholly within the town, not be a recipient of any other funds from the town, not be federally or provincially funded, and not raising funds on behalf of another group who would not otherwise qualify, not a registered political party, constituency, registered candidate, agree to acknowledge the town in publicity, and show outcomes that positively benefit the town and its citizens.
Okay.
So theoretically, a church would be okay.
So
The current
here's one that is a little bit in a gray area. If you remember, Moses Lake at time come and have asked us to help them with a baseball, or I don't really know what kind of sports event, and we're looking for donation.
Where's the function held? On the reserve or in town?
It's held in town, but here in a policy, it says that the people
They're funded.
applying have to be from the town. You see?
So they wouldn't
So
qualify.
that's another issue, because there's people outside the town applying for something for the use in the town. You see what I mean?
Could we add that? Could
So
we say
there
that
is,
either,
that's not, right?
So,
But if they bring
you know,
that,
if
there
you
are
look
people
at-
who are
yeah,
benefiting
no, that's a good point.
economically.
do we really need that the applicant must be from town? Aren't we more concerned about that the event be held here? So for example, you know, when they have that,
In the Grand Fund or
the running race that they have, we all think that's a huge success. Well, I don't know the applicant. I don't know if she lives in the town or in the county, and I don't really care. I'm glad that they're having it in town. We get the business. It's good for everybody. Our kids can participate. I don't really care where she's from. I care where the event is. If it were held in Lethbridge, I'm not donating to it. Maybe we don't need the where they live part.
Well, I can see, for us right now, we in contravention
Yeah,
also,
right.
never mind just a timeline, we're in contravention of the source.
Anything else, guys, on this?
Just that we will bring back kind of tests on the eligibility requirements
Okay.
and narrow those down, because we definitely have some questions there too, but appreciate all the feedback.
Could you also, Jeff, bring a budget amount for us? In other words, if we're budgeting, which we are, that should be, like you said, you know, we should know ballpark what we're thinking. We could base it off what we've done in the past, but it should, I'd like to see it as its own category, and, you know, we approve it, and when it's gone, the same as any other line is gone.
Yeah, a cap, I think, with the budget and a cap with the
Delete the text,
request.
Okay,
Okay? Everyone okay with that?
yeah.
So we solved everything while you were gone.
Perfect. All right, moving on to fees and charges, Jeff.
So this one's very similar. I'm just looking for kind of fairly simple advice. We have a practice in the town that I was realizing it isn't in policy. This, Councillor Jensen and I have spoken about this, where we had a group that just phoned into the town office one day and said, hey, we need a meeting room. Can we use the upstairs room? Sure. It's available that night, no problem. And whoever they talked to just said, yeah, the rate is $60, because that's what it costs to rent the room. Fine, thanks, bye. And then they saw Counselor Jensen and said, well, wait a minute, we're a group in the community, can't we just have it for free?
Once a month?
Once, yeah, well, they just asked, don't we normally get that for free? So I got looking into that, and I realized this has been a long time practice of the town to accommodate our groups to do that, but we don't have it formalized anywhere.
And the Ag Society meets here for free.
Yeah, and again, we're happy to do that for the most part, right? As long as they don't trash the place and break stuff, which we haven't run into, we don't normally see that. And so then it got me thinking along when Joshua and I have been talking about all the donation thing is that a practice that we think is a good one, and are there any parameters around it? And is there any groups we wouldn't want using the facility? And, what's the right cadence? And it just opened up all those questions. So we've been doing it in practice. I'd just like to be able to put it, something as a clause in a policy
Policy
so
of
it's
some
clear.
sorts.
Counselor Burton?
So one difference might be, and I agree, let's let them use our facilities when we can. For example, you mentioned the Ag Society, but you were on the Ag Society committee. I'm on one of their committees. It might be that if it's one that we've put one of our people onto, we might treat those differently.
Like the Historic Society might want to meet here
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
So I think those ones go without saying, that if we voted and put somebody on a committee, I think that goes without saying that they could use our facilities.
But
If there's one that none of us in this room are on their, in their group,
Like the Lions Club or something?
yeah, like the Lions Club or something, I'm still of the opinion we should do everything we can to let them use it. What the cost might be or might not be, I don't know. But I think it's the same considerations. The only one that I would say no to would be
for profit.
for-profit or another political party, for the exact same reasons. I think that's kind of a nice boundary.
Counselor Jensen?
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with letting a group come in here that is promoting Cardston in any way and looking towards trying to bring money into the community. I think that's a plus for us. And so I don't think that they should be punished for, by being charged a rent for a facility. I think that if they book it and it's available, and why not, if it's available, why can they not use it as long as they're citizens here of Cardston? And, I don't think anything wrong with it.
Here.
I think if they have a nonprofit organization, it would be a right fit, because they already have a mandate to help the community in one way or another. So I would say nonprofit organization who have a status as such should have that privilege. We have to decide how many times. Once a month would be, normally they have a meeting a month. So if they have that, I wouldn't be offended by something like that.
Counselor Jensen?
Yeah, and nonprofit is fine, but the group that we're discussing is the group that is a spin-off of community theater. And so they're working towards becoming a society, and then secondly, then they can work towards becoming a nonprofit. Like there's steps that they're taking. And they're a group that are eventually going to be paying to use the Civic Center for their theater productions. And so they're in a stage now where they're trying to get up and running and moving. And I think in the long run, the benefit that we're going to receive from them is a good thing. But are they a registered nonprofit? Are you talking about not registered nonprofit? They're not that yet, but they will be eventually.
Counselor Burton?
That's the exact point I was going to make. We have lots of groups that are organized but don't have legal status. Because that's a big deal to take that step. It costs money. You have to report annually and have an accountant, and
It takes a long time, too.
it takes time, yeah. So I think our test that we already have built in does it serve the community broadly? You know, that's a better test than a legal test of, are they a certified nonprofit organization?
Counselor Granger?
So for example, the Taekwondo Club wants to use this room for free to hold a bingo. Would we say yes or no? You know, I mean, somewhere you gotta put some parameters on this and draw the line. I would say no. Let's not go rent a hall somewhere else, you know?
Well, that becomes different when they're, you know, we're talking about if they're coming to have a meeting with their with their
Well, I
group.
think-
If the Taekwondo were coming and wanting to have a meeting of their group, sure.
Counselor Burton?
But let's say that same Taekwondo group wants to use our gymnasium downstairs, our auditorium, for a meet. I'm fine with that. It's a community thing, our
Free?
kids are, no, I haven't said free.
Yeah.
I've said that they can use it. And that's why I started my earlier comments, I don't know how we would price it, but I do know that I would like to see people being able to use our facilities as much as they can if it's community-based. And, you know, if you have a club like that, any other club, I know the wrestling club has talked about having things in here, you know, when they had a tournament, could they use it? And if I remember correctly, I thought we said that they could. So, you know, as long as it's community-based,
Yep.
in my mind.
Anything else, Jeff, on that? Did you get lots?
Yeah, furiously taking some notes here. Good. Okay, so we'll work on that a little bit and bring it back for some more discussion.
Okay, moving on to the land use bylaw. Jeff?
Yeah, so this one, again, pretty simple for tonight. Ryan Dick got a hold of us with some proposed changes that he'd like to see in the land use bylaw. They're centered around really one topic in this, in the things he talked about, which was just floodway and flood fringe development. And making sure we shore that up. We're dealing with approvals of properties in the Atkins development right now, which I believe that he is aware of those, you know, he is making sure that those are flood-proofed appropriately, but the land use bylaw didn't speak to it a lot. There was also one other little clause in there about making sea-cans a discretionary use in recreation, because we approved the one for the track and field group. So we added that. And this is really the time that if there's other things that we want to address within the land use bylaw, now's the time to kind of get them all on the table so that we can start seeing what that looks like and then bring a draft for first reading.
Counselor Burton?
Yeah, that issue of the flood has twofold. It sprung up because of that development, but
Yeah, exactly.
the province fairly recently, I know this just from being on MPC, came out with new guidelines, and they're not surprisingly more stringent than the old guidelines. So I'm very much for what he's proposed. I think some of the wording could be better, and maybe, if you don't mind, I would contact him directly and suggest some different wording, or at least see why he's used the wording he has, and I may see him on Thursday, so.
He is coming down on Thursday. He's
Okay.
coming down early to meet with me.
If you don't mind, I would have that discussion with him, and then if there are any changes, get it to you, but the concept, I agree with.
It's okay.
Anything else on that, everyone? Okay, moving on to some correspondence. We had one last week that kind of skipped over on accident-ish, and about the children's mural project. And every time we talk about murals now, I get a little anxious, and yeah, does anyone have any opinions on that or thoughts? Councilor Jensen?
I was wondering, could they use the mural that we had and paint over it? Or
Fortunately
is
not.
it-
There's an anti-graffiti coating on it. It's been bomb-proofed because we were expecting it might get vandalized.
So I don't really understand who's asking and what the ask is.
Sure.
Jeff can explain.
So I'm new to this too. This group so this gentleman reached out to me, and I thought it was in relation to our other mural discussion, but it actually was just coincidental, because I was really anxious about it too. And he reached out and said, hey, you have a Francophone school in your community, and we have funding from the federal government to do programs that, you know, introduce those schools into the community and represent the culture and show that, you know, the cultures work together. And we work with the schools, both the Francophone and the I guess I'll call it an Anglophone school system, but the non-Francophone school system. And we have the kids do joint projects together. And just to put them around as a sign of goodwill in the community and to do that. And I said, oh, that's kind of cool. And so they pick 15 communities a year and they have some funding. They pay for, I believe, 89% of the total. I don't know why that's their number, but they pay the bulk of the project and they coordinate everything with the schools. What they ask from the municipality is the 11% and a location. And so they figure our 11% would be, I think it was about $1,500. It was somewhere in there. And then a place to put it. And then they contact West Wind and they contact Franco Sud and they bring them all together and do activities with them in the school. And they want to do it before the school year is out.
And it's quite nice projects what they're doing, actually.
I guess the question is, around the table, is there any appetite for this at this moment?
I'm gun shy.
I feel better once the
I am
school is
too,
built.
I really am.
Yeah.
What you're,
I'm a little bit hesitant at the moment on that.
I'm gun
but-
shy.
I know where I wouldn't recommend you put it, no matter what it is.
I'd rather.
I mean, if they're gonna put it maybe at their school or whatever, or where, their building, okay. But at the same time, anyways,
I think
Councilor
it's-
Granger and
yeah,
Councilor
I think
Burton.
it's premature. I'd rather see that school board up and running so we've got people to deal with. And that if this became real, that we would be talking in real terms. So maybe a year from now, we could consider this in conjunction with the new school.
Councilor Burton?
So some of us are working on what we call the neutrality bylaw and digging into that quite a bit. And I would like to wait to see, like you, I would like to wait to see where that lands before we start approving segments of our community to throw up murals.
Councilor Jensen, Councilor Court?
I don't know, I kind of have the opposite thinking. I kind of thought it would be kind of a nice kickoff and introduction to the Francophone school and a meeting of togetherness between the two school groups is what I kind of thought. I thought it was a great idea, but
Councilor Court?
We're talking 8 to 10 kids, is that correct? Something like that right now?
20 at the Francophone school?
20?
26, I think,
Okay.
is where they're at. Yeah.
The problem with all this right now is they're meeting in the provincial building. Where would you put the murals? I'd rather see the school built, them built, do the
That's
murals.
what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
There's already
For the murals, for the
quote
community.
unquote some issues there because of the bathroom situations with the regular workers that are there. I don't think it's a major issue, but they've kind of taken over all the staff bathrooms because of the kids, right?
Jeff?
So I'd rather see it wait till the school's built myself.
I was just gonna mention on that topic, I'm meeting with, on Thursday, on Thursday I meet with Francophone School. They're coming back down to look at the other potential site that we're looking to acquire. But they have been approved for 4 modulars and a gymnasium.
Oh,
So
But-
they're ready to go.
What I would say is, from what I read in what was given last time, it's not a mural to go to a school, it's a mural to go in the community somewhere to demonstrate that togetherness, and it's to demonstrate inclusivity. So it's not going to be all white, all this, all that. They're a little bit more savvy than that. So the problem is, where do you put such a thing, right? In our community is not exactly an easy fit.
I was just gonna mention, I think that was our thought with the last one too, but that others perceived it not to be that. So that's what worries me.
And,
Regardless of what goes up, there's
and maybe
another
Jeff, you
opinion.
can maybe explain a little bit of the context of this thing.
Well, if I might, I don't mind this idea of asking if we can be considered in the 15 next year. Where we
Right.
have the school is here, there's public awareness of it. We maybe have direction around the neutrality bylaw and how that would impact the type of things. I'm fine to tell Mr. Arcan that in the morning, that's no problem.
Yeah,
So if that's,
yeah,
but if that's the
I
prevailing
think
position.
maybe,
Okay. All in favor of that? We don't have to vote, but sounds good. All right, Alberta Southwest is having a AGM, I believe, at the museum here.
Remington, that's correct.
And I believe Councillor Burton? Or
Councillor
Councillor
Court.
Court. See, this is why I don't have my paper. I had it written down.
We moved chairs, so
Yeah.
this was confusing. you.
Are you able to go to that?
Yes, there's room for 85 people. I haven't talked to Bev for a while, but I'm assuming the mayor and, I'm guessing there's a few more people if they want to go.
When is it again?
It's June the 5th, I believe.
4th.
4th?
It's a
It's that
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, June 4th.
Yep, that's when it is.
At what time?
Start early.
4:45 is
They're
the
gonna start
meeting.
early for those that want to go through the museum. So some of them will be there by 3:30-ish type.
Yeah.
The actual, I'll
3:30.
know next week, because we talk more next week.
Okay, well, give us a little bit more
Yeah,
detail.
Well,
up
I
until the,
have all that. If you
Okay,
want to
all
take a
right.
tour of the museum, you go at 3:15. If you don't, then 4:45.
because we will talk to you till after our meeting, because it's
Okay.
on a Wednesday, we meet Tuesday, so.
Looks like Minister Scow and Brad Donaldson, Dr. Donaldson, CEO of Lethbridge Poly, will be talking at that.
Who's the other one?
Minister Scow
Right.
and Dr. Brad Donaldson, President of the Lethbridge Poly, will be speaking.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, did we skip 7?
We have 7?
We did.
Yep, we
I
did.
have a question if I could, when it's the right time.
It's a great time.
So
Oh, it's like, what was on 7?
That's why I was like, sorry, I didn't ask for questions.
in helping the Ag Society prepare for their reporting today, it became apparent to me that we have in our lease that they have to provide those documents by April 30th. They have a September year end, and then things like the certificate of good standing doesn't come till June. So what I would propose, so it's just kind of it didn't quite fit in that date that we stuck in there, may not be the best date, so, but even for their presentation, it said that they were supposed to be here by the end of May, but they wanted to come after,
End of April.
March.
Oh, was it March? Okay.
So, but then they had the rodeo in April, and they wanted to come after that, so what I would propose is that maybe
June.
Jeff and I and Eric or Sean or whoever could sit down, probably Sean, because he does most of that kind of paperwork and the year-end and stuff. If we could sit down and just look if that date makes the most sense, there might be another date that just makes more sense than our arbitrary
Yeah,
April
exactly.
30th that we had in there.
Yeah, if everyone's okay with that, I'd prepare an agreement amendment to bring back.
Yeah, and the other issue too, Jeff, is the list of improvements that they made. I don't know when the accountants want that, if it's, because they have different year ends, so is it the society's year end? Is it our year end? Is it just arbitrarily once a year? So we'll need to talk to the accountants too, and I think between the accountants, us, and them, we can come to maybe a date or dates plural that make more sense.
Okay, anything else, guys?
If we could backtrack back to that AGM,
Yep.
if I can find out who's going and when they're going, we have to let her know by Monday, so,
I'll be there.
okay,
I can reply on behalf of both of you if you'd like.
okay.
Yeah.
My wife and I will be there.
Okay, Carol will be with you. Okay, sounds good. I will let her know tomorrow.
Are you planning on going early, Mayor, or will you be going to the,
Well, I might go early just
He wants a tour.
because it's a fun, well, I've done
Rub
it many
shoulders.
times, but
okay,
just to be
Are
there.
you gonna go early for the tour, Counselor?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, I'll let her know tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll get a motion for closed session.
So moved?
Counselor Granger, all in favor? Thank you, media.
Bill's the media tonight.